She was married to one of the most famous men on the planet. She stood by him through championships, scandals, and public humiliations that would have broken most women. She smiled for the cameras, built an empire, raised 5 children, and kept it together. All while the world was watching. But here's what the world didn't know. Behind closed doors, Shaunie Henderson was fighting a war that had nothing to do with basketball. And in 2004, she finally picked up a pen and told every single bit of it. This is not clickbait. This is not old drama recycled for views. This is the real story of one of the most resilient women in entertainment, and why her truth is even more powerful than the rumors. Stay with me, because this one hits different. Let's start from the beginning, because most people only know Shaunie as Shaq's ex-wife. And that right there, that is the first disrespect. Shaunie O'Neal, now Shaunie Henderson, was born on November 27th, 1974, in Bellflower, California. She grew up in a household that wasn't wealthy, wasn't glamorous, and wasn't connected to professional sports. She built herself through ambition, through hustle, and through a sharp business mind that most people overlooked because they were too busy looking at who she was standing next to. She attended Cal State Sacramento. She had goals. She had a plan. And then she met Shaquille O'Neal. Now, when you're a young woman and you meet a 7'1" NBA superstar who's charming, funny, and showering you with attention, life changes fast. They got married on December 26, 2002. In that moment, the world decided Shaunie's story was really just a chapter in Shaq's story. They were wrong. On paper, the O'Neal marriage looked like a fairy tale. Shaquille was a 4-time NBA champion, a cultural icon. They had beautiful children, Sharif, Amira, Shakir, Mayara, plus Shaunie's son Miles from a previous relationship. They had mansions, they had moments, they had everything. Behind the scenes, cracks were forming. Shaquille O'Neal's name became linked to other women. There were whispers, then there were allegations, then eventually there was public confirmation. Multiple women came forward over the years. The infidelity wasn't a rumor, it was documented. It was real, and Shaunie was living through it in real time, with cameras constantly pointed at her face. In 2009, she filed for divorce, and the world went wild. Talk shows, tabloids, bloggers, everybody had an opinion. Was she leaving for money? Was she bitter? Was it really over? Nobody stopped to ask was, how is she doing? Here is where Shaunie's story gets really interesting. Because most people, after a high-profile divorce like that, retreat. They disappear. They become a cautionary tale. Shaunie O'Neal did the opposite. In 2010, she launched Basketball Wives on VH1. And she didn't just star in it, she produced it. She was the creative force behind one of the most watched reality franchises in the history of black television. The show ran for multiple seasons, spawned spin-offs, launched careers, and made VH1 a destination for millions of viewers every week. Let that sink in. The woman the world was busy feeling sorry for was quietly becoming one of the most powerful black women in reality television production. She was building equity, she was building legacy, she was building herself, and she did it while co-parenting, while navigating public scrutiny, and while doing the internal work that most people never show the world. Now, let's talk about 2024, because this is where the real earthquake happened. Shaunie released her memoir, Undefeated, and it did not disappoint. This was not a ghost-written PR fluff piece. This was raw. This was honest. This was a woman in her 50s choosing radical vulnerability over comfortable silence. One passage in particular broke the internet. Shaunie admitted publicly in her own words that she was never sure she was truly in love with Shaquille O'Neal when she married him. Read that again. She wasn't sure she was ever in love with him. Now, that takes courage that most people will never understand, because it would have been so easy to keep the fairy tale alive, to say, yes, we loved each other deeply. It just didn't work out. That's the safe answer. That's the answer that protects everybody's feelings. Shaunie chose truth over comfort. She chose her own narrative over the one the world had written for her. She described feeling swept up in the life, the fame, the speed of it all. She described a relationship that had passion, but perhaps not the deep-rooted, chosen love that sustains a marriage. And she talked about the toll that years of infidelity and emotional neglect took on her sense of self. This wasn't bitterness, this was clarity. Now here's a moment that surprised a lot of people. Shaquille O'Neal, for all his bravado and his public persona, actually responded to these revelations with something rare. Accountability. In interviews following the memoir's release, Shaq publicly stated, and I'm paraphrasing here because his words were actually quite strong, that he was a dickhead during their marriage. His words. He said he wasn't protecting her. He said he wasn't being the man he should have been. That kind of public admission from a man of Shaq's stature is not nothing. A lot of men in his position would have gotten defensive. They would have gone on social media with vague posts. They would have let their PR team handle it. Instead, he said, I was wrong. She deserved better. And Shaunie, she didn't gloat. She didn't post about it. She let it be what it was. A closing of a chapter that had been left open for too long. Here is the part of Shaunie's story that the clickbait channels don't want to talk about because it doesn't fit the narrative of drama and dysfunction. Shaunie Henderson is happy. In May 2022, she married Pastor Keion Henderson, the founder and senior pastor of the Lighthouse Church in Houston, Texas, one of the fastest growing megachurches in the country. And this wasn't a quiet courthouse wedding. This was a celebration, a stunning ceremony that she and Keion shared with the world, openly and joyfully. What's striking about this relationship is everything it isn't. It isn't performance. It isn't damage control. It isn't two famous people orbiting each other for brand purposes. By every public account and everything Shaunie has shared, this is a woman who, for the first time in her adult life, is in a relationship where she feels seen, chosen, valued, not for what she represents, but for who she is. She now serves as First Lady of the Lighthouse Church. She is active in ministry and community outreach and the work of building something spiritual alongside a partner who leads with faith and intention. The girl from Bellflower, California, who once wasn't sure if she'd ever experienced real love, found it, on her own terms, in her own time. If that's not a story worth telling, I don't know what is. Let's pull back for a second, because beyond the headlines and the memoir passages and the beautiful wedding photos, there is a lesson here that applies to every single person watching this video. Shaunie Henderson's story is about the courage it takes to redefine yourself after the world has already decided who you are. It's about building an empire quietly while people underestimate you. It's about being honest, even when the honest truth is uncomfortable, because your peace matters more than their approval. It's about understanding that starting over is not failure. It is, sometimes, the bravest and most intelligent thing you can do. She didn't stay in a marriage that was breaking her just because leaving it would be complicated. She didn't hide her truth in a memoir just because it might stir up conversation. She didn't shrink herself to fit the frame the world built around her. She is 51 years old. She is First Lady of a thriving church. She is an executive producer with credits on one of television's most enduring reality franchises. She is an author, and she is, by her own account, finally, truly at peace. So the next time you see a headline that says, Shaunie Henderson has finally had enough, understand what that actually means. She has had enough. Enough of pretending. Enough of performing. Enough of letting other people tell her story. But what she's not done is winning. That part is still very much in progress. If this video gave you something today, a new perspective, a moment of inspiration, something to think about, hit that like button, leave a comment below, and subscribe if you're new here. We tell real stories on this channel, no clickbait, no recycled drama, just the truth, delivered with respect. I'll see you in the next one.